So thanks, Narsi, and good morning to all of you. Couple of thoughts before we begin the session. I thought I was the only one who, in this room, who graduated in 1972. It was so pleasing to hear that Mr. Shah is older than me. So we are probably two people here who are eligible for the new medical insurance scheme launched by the Government of India. Second, when Narsi asked me to be part of this session, one of the things I mentioned to him is that what is my role? My role is to be able to give something to the audience for them to take it away. I'm not here to speak for myself. I'm here to try and share my thoughts so that it will be useful. So it's a Saturday. I see that probably there is about 30% of the population yesterday here. So I'm going to assume you are the serious guys who's really interested in knowing. And out of all of you here, I don't know how many are looking at solar energy efficiency, and probably there is a small percentage here who's probably still interested in the bioeconomy. And between me and Sundar, I think we will first set the context of what is the status of bioeconomy as an opportunity for the two groups of people whom I think are here. One is the people who are either startups or who are interested to begin their journey in the startup world, and the other group, of course, the investors. So I hope we will share some thoughts with you and our experiences, where you can go away knowing that there is a great opportunity in the bioeconomy for this country. And also the good news that the government also thinks so. And there are many plans which they have begun to execute, which we will share some of that with you, where both the startup entrepreneur as well as the investor will see that there is great opportunity. So with that, I think I will go over the first few slides to set the context. Then Sundar will share his experience, and I will round it up by talking about the experience I have of building a bio company here in India and going through with that. I hope that's okay, Sundar? Yeah, okay. So, down. Yeah. So here's the context. One of the challenges of being 70 plus is difficult to read this. So I think I'm going to stand here and read if you don't mind. Of course, the global bioeconomy is estimated to be around 4 trillion. Okay, so you can do the maths. It's about 4% of the global economic opportunity. Out of that, India is only somewhere around 150 billion, if I remember the number correctly. So we are not even scratching the surface, right? If you look at it, in most opportunities, India will be between 8 and 10% of the global opportunity. Here we are something like 1% or 2% of the global opportunity, which means, there is a lot of opportunity in the bioeconomy. That is one thing to be kept in mind. The second thing, this is accelerating. The growth is accelerating. They are saying that by 2050, it is going to be 50 trillion, the global opportunity. So there is a lot of opportunity. There is a lot that can be done to contribute to supporting the climate action, because many of these technologies and many of these opportunities, as the slide says, has a potential to keep the global warming below 1.5 degrees C. Obviously, our brief is not to get into more detail to that, but just to say that the experts who prepared this report a couple of years ago have gone into it, and they are saying that there is an opportunity to keep it below 1.5 degree with many of these opportunities. The newly launched BioE3 policy, to which Narsi alluded to, is again something which I mentioned in my initial introduction, that they've just launched this policy a couple of months ago, in fact, in the month of August. And that is aimed at accelerating commercialization of the bio opportunity for people, including the startups. So more about it in the next slide, I think. As I said, recently introduced, the goal is to fast track innovation and innovation to technology. I mean, they think that there is a lot of innovation, but they're all in the labs, that they need to become technology, and they need to be adopted to make commercial opportunities out of that. There are 6 thematic sectors covered by this Bio-E3 policy. You can just go on Google and search for this. You will get the policy document. Biobased chemicals and enzymes, which both Sundar and I are part of this opportunity. We will talk about that. The others are the functional foods. There is therapeutics, biotherapeutics, agriculture, carbon capture and utilization through bioprocesses, futuristic marine and space research. This is what is covered in the Bio-E3 policy. Added to this, just 3 or 4 days ago, in fact, day before yesterday, I think, the Union Cabinet approved the Bio-Ride scheme. I haven't gone into too much details of the scheme, but again, I put the slide in just to let you know that the government is very serious in helping the growth of this opportunity, and you guys should go into more details of what these schemes are. For example, in the Bio-E3 policy, they are building infrastructure. They're building something called as a biomanufacturing hub in the NCR region, where they will have infrastructure to help entrepreneurs to make use of the new technologies which have been either developed in our own labs here in India or coming out of the other countries. So there is effort by the government to support this. In my opinion, there are 2 archetypes possible to take advantage of this opportunity. What kind of approaches can be there to succeed in the bioeconomy? I believe you can be either a niche player, or you can try to do it in the cost play, where you become the lowest cost producer for a product or a service which is in demand all over the world. We are likely to succeed more in the niche because of you saw that we are still 1% of the global bioeconomy, which means, our expertise, skills, and infrastructure, more specifically the infrastructure in the country, to help become a cost player is not yet there. China is far ahead of us. They thought about what we are thinking today maybe 15, 20 years ago. So they have a big advantage in terms of the cost. But in the niche play segment, I think we have a great opportunity, is what I think. Why? We all know this. I think maybe this is a motherhood slide. Maybe I don't have to spend time on this. The opportunity is definitely there, and as a community, people assembled here are definitely either have an interest or a life goal, as Arjun was mentioning in the previous session, to be able to have played a role in the future world where our children, in my case, my grandchildren, would be living. Right? We want to make a difference, and here is an opportunity to be part of doing that, and I'm sure that could be one of the motivations for you to look at. What are the typical problems? I speak from experience. All my years in the industry, as well as starting and building ProClean, I have seen these 4 are the key factors for either a problem, challenge, or success, whichever way you want to look at. If you don't have performance, which means if you don't have a product or a service which delivers as good as or better than what the customer is experiencing today, you can forget it. You don't even try to get into that area. Second, cost. This has been talked about yesterday as well as this morning. You don't expect to build a business on subsidy. If you're starting that way, my opinion is you're starting with a disadvantage. Many think subsidy is an advantage. I think subsidy is a disadvantage. So you need to make products and services which can deliver economic value to the customer better than what he or she is experiencing today. Then you are likely to succeed much faster. Third is compatibility. The word compatibility I use here in the context of saying that the friction for adoption of your product or service must be as low as possible. You shouldn't be asking the customer to invest money to capital expense to make a change in his infrastructure, or you can't go and tell him, you change the pH or you change the temperature, my product will work at 95, not at 60. You do all that, I think the chances of succeeding is less. So right from the beginning, if you keep this in mind, I think your chances of success is much higher. Finally, scalability. This is something which I don't have to teach people here. You have to think about it right from the beginning. So you don't make products inside a test tube using, let's say, coconut milk, because you can't scale it, right? So you have to start thinking about it right from the beginning. This is my thought. I think I'll stop here. I think I'll let Sundar speak about his experience. We come from two different, experience levels. He is in a technology area which is very modern but well established. I come from the experience of starting something with an idea and scaling it up and building. So I think you will get a perspective of both. And let Sundar share his experiences, and I'll come back and maybe another 5 minutes I'll take to talk about mine. Thank you.
Dr. Shivram. So I'm basically going to talk about bioplastics. I would say this whole word of biodegradability is probably a very abused word. It's probably the most greenwashed term, and hopefully, I'm going to clarify a few points on what it means when you talk of biodegradability, compostability, bioplastics, and how does this lead to a commercial business? What are some of the opportunities in that space? Now, when you talk of single-use plastics, it is the fastest growing category in plastics, and plastics are great materials. The challenge is most of these plastics, when you talk of single use, they have a very low recycling and a high leakage rate. And that's why it becomes the most challenging segment to address in terms of a circular economy. Now, when you look at the chemistry of this plastic, it's a carbon-carbon backbone polymer. And typically, that's one of the strongest bonds that nature has made. So while plastics are very good, you can keep it, store it, you can do whatever you want with it, it's that same bond which is going to create a challenge when you want to dispose it. And this is why it starts to kind of accumulate in the environment. Now, coming to the circular economy vision for bioplastics or for plastics, there is a lot of work being done by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. And there are essentially about 6 stages. The first one is, how can you eliminate any unnecessary plastic? So this is how we start by talking about the circular economy. The second is, if you can't eliminate it, can you reduce it? Now, if you can't reduce it, then can you make it 100% either recyclable, reusable, or compostable? The fourth point is, how do you ensure that what you call as reusable or recyclable or compostable is actually getting end of life in that perspective? The fifth is, how do you decouple the source of the raw material from the end of life? So you have 2 problems here. One is, where is your source of your raw material? Is it coming from a renewable feedstock, or is it coming from a fossil-based feedstock? And then the end of life, so when you dispose it in a certain environment, what happens to the fate of it? So you'll have to decouple these 2 points. And finally, whatever packaging you bring about, it has to be free of any hazardous chemicals, because you can't bring a sustainability and then create a problem on a hazard side. Now, when you look at bioplastics, typically there are 2 main concepts. One is, what is bio-based? This is a term which you would have heard a lot. Now, when we say something is bio-based, what we mean is, what is the origin of the carbon in that molecule? Which means, is it coming from a petroleum feedstock, or is it coming from a biologically derived feedstock? The second concept is the end-of-life concept. That is, when you call something as biodegradable or compostable, then what it means is, when you take your product and dispose it, does it get taken out of the environmental compartment in a very safe way? So that means that calls for the biodegradability or the compostability. Now, all bio-based plastics are not necessarily biodegradable, and all biodegradable or compostable plastics are not necessarily have to be from a bio-based source. So there's some misconceptions, and there are lots of facts which are misconstrued in this space. Now, when you look at bio-based materials, the value is, how do you manage carbon? Now, typically, when you look at the carbon cycling, you have carbon which is being compartmentalized into different forms. You have carbon which is there in the trees, you have carbon in the ocean, you have carbon which is lying in the petroleum feedstocks. So when someone is talking of plastics as being unnatural, that's not true, because plastics are also coming over fossilization of carbon over billions of years. So the concept of managing carbon, and if you can see this chart here, you can see that the time scale of putting out carbon is in 1 to 10 years, which is there on the left-hand side, and the time scale of fixing carbon is in millions of years. So what it means is that we are putting more carbon dioxide than what we are fixing, and this is what is causing global warming, climate change, and things like that. Now, when we use bio-based materials, you can just see the green arrow here. When we use materials which are made directly from biological feedstocks, then the time scale of fixing carbon is in balance. So this is the value proposition for using any biological feedstock. It could be paper, it could be jute, it could be cotton, or it could be a bioplastic. So essentially, why bio-based? There's reduced carbon footprint, but there's also food security and creating value for the rural economy. Now, when you look at a petroleum-based economy, it doesn't stop with just the petroleum. So today, when people make petroleum, they also make chemicals, they make intermediates, they make plastic. So which means you have an ecosystem which is making multiple products, which is why the cost is at a certain parity. But when you look at the bioeconomy, that process has to be built. So today, I would like to say that in India, Dr. Shivram was saying about the sugar. There's a first company, Balrampur Chini Mills, who have actually announced a 2,000 crore investment in building a polylactic acid facility in India by 2027. So this is the first company which is coming and saying that I'm going to take my sugar molecule and create more downstream value to it. So what I'm saying is that the bioeconomy will have to be built through multiple products, chemicals, intermediates. And that's what will make the cost come down from where it is today. Now, when you look at end of life, this is where biodegradability really comes in. You must have heard this word a lot, people talking about my material is biodegradable. What does this word really mean? So when we call something as biodegradable, what we mean is, when you take a product and dispose it, can that disposal environment consume the carbon in the product and completely convert it to carbon dioxide and humic material? So the end of life has to be a complete conversion of the carbon to a certain humic material. And here you have different mechanisms by which you can actually go through this biodegradation. Now, there's a lot of challenges when people talk about biodegradable plastics. Sometimes they have certain additive technologies which are added, and this, what it does is it kind of breaks down the polymer. So from a plastic, you have broken it down into a smaller fragment, which is kind of becomes microplastics, and this gets ingested by a lot of marine organisms, birds, thinking that this is food, and it goes into the food chain. So understanding biodegradability means that it has to be complete. So biodegradability cannot be partial. If someone says that my material is 50% biodegradable, then there's no value in creating that. You might as well continue to use a conventional plastic. Now, where does compostable plastics add the maximum value from a business perspective? Compostable plastics help in creating a closure, especially when it relates to food waste diversion, organic waste. Now, when we look at a typical solid waste stream, about 40 to 50% of our municipal solid waste is organic in nature. And right now, all of this organic waste is going into landfills, which is a very poor repository for this organic waste because nothing biodegrades in a landfill. So when we take this organic waste and move it into more managed infrastructures like composting, that is creating more value. And compostable plastics aid in this diversion of organic waste. So this is the area where we can create a lot of business value when we use compostable plastics. Now, the one thing I would also like to talk about is how technologies can coexist and why it is important to also be conscious of what other technologies can bring in. So our experience at NatureTech has been that, when we looked at compostable plastics, we were talking of, how do we combine our technology with a technology like paper? And this is a great fit because I don't know, but how many of you know that all the paper products like paper cups and all that we use, it's actually got a coating on the inside, which is either a wax coating or a polyethylene or a plastic coating. And the whole purpose of using that paper gets destroyed because now, once we do the coating, we can neither treat it like a paper, nor can we treat it like a plastic. So we've made a hybrid product that consumers believe is paper, but is not paper, and it can neither be recycled as a plastic, nor can it be composted as paper. So here we could look at a combination of a bioplastic technology with paper, where we are looking at combining the good points of paper. So paper is opaque, it's naturally absorbent, it's recyclable, and a material like PLA, which is polylactic acid, is transparent, it's got a good oil, grease, water barrier, it's got a good bond strength, it's got a good seal strength. So when you combine these two technologies, you get a product which is much better than paper or the biopolymer. So what I would, at least from our experience, what I would really like to say is that we have to be open about embracing other technologies. Many times in this journey, we all tend to believe that our technology is probably the one-stop solution. It's very important to step back, look at what other technologies are there and see how we can coexist and create value. And this has been a classic case, and I would be very happy to say that today this technology in India is being used by McDonald's, Starbucks, or some of the global brands have adopted this technology. And here you can have multiple recovery streams. So you can go into a fiber recovery where you can look at an end of life of taking it like a paper, or you can compost it along with the food waste and the organic waste and complete the value chain. So I'm just going to talk very briefly, just about 2-3 minutes about some of the applications. This is being commercially available now, so there's a great business opportunity in this space. You can have coatings, you can have paper products, there are secondary packaging applications with compostable plastics. Hospitality industry is using a lot of applications. You can see this in some of the 5-star hotels like ITC, the Taj Group, who is kind of using it for different applications. Industrial, so you can also look at automotive. This is a seat cover which is being used by ACGL in Goa. This is part of a Tata Group company who's using this product. This is Eureka Forbes using it for packaging all their vacuum cleaners and other accessories which come along with the vacuum cleaners. Consumer packaging, you have ITC again, who's been looking into some of the consumer packaging applications. This was actually way back, about 15 years back, when Ford actually got into creating a bio-based seat, where they were looking at replacing polyols with the bio-based polyols to create the carbon footprint reduction value proposition. And a lot of food packaging, like Coca-Cola has launched this plant bottle, which is up to 30% bio-based. In fact, this is the Dasani water bottles, which the green cap, and you'll find it, at least in the US, you'll find it. That bottle is made from a PET molecule where the ethylene glycol component is now coming from a bio-based feedstock. And I'm very proud to say that India Glycols is the company which is actually supplying that to Coca-Cola worldwide. So there is a lot of momentum building up on using bio-based chemicals as part replacements into that overall polymer as well. You have Danone, which is the French company, using it for yogurt cups. So these are some of the applications of compostable plastics, and really what I would like to say is that this area is growing, and as Dr. Shivram mentioned, the Bio 3E policy which the government is now coming up with is also creating a lot of opportunities for bioplastics. You have a large sugar company who is already called in for some investment into this space. There are other players coming in. So it's an area where there's a lot of potential and scope in the future. Over to you, Dr. Shivram.
So to quickly share our experience in Proclean. Proclean is a company which makes biodegradable surfactants and other products which we replace the chemical equivalents in multiple industries. We use a very unique fermentation system to do that. While I will not go into too many details, the innovation is actually in 2 or 3 areas. Number one is we were able to come up with a culture, microbial culture, which we could use in our fermentation to do the fermentation in ambient condition. Typically, fermentation requires constant temperature for them to perform well, the microbes to perform well. So by avoiding temperature control in the fermenter, we have eliminated most of the energy requirement in the fermentation process. The second innovation is that at the end of the fermentation, the entire broth becomes the final product, whereby we have eliminated downstream purification process steps. And those of you who are familiar with the fermentation-based manufacturing processes, you will know that 60 to 80% of the manufacturing cost is actually in the downstream steps and not in the fermentation itself. So we've eliminated downstream, therefore we have reduced costs significantly. So by these couple of innovations, which were not very complicated, but you had to think through how to do it and be able to scale it. It is easy to, as I mentioned in my introductory speech, I said when you develop the processes in the lab, you need to keep in mind that we are going to scale it up at some stage. Today we are making something like 500 tons of product every month through this process. So it was a scalable process which we developed, because of which we could do that. So by these 2-3 innovations, we have been able to significantly reduce energy consumption, water consumption, which I will talk about. Just a comparison between the products we replace and what we sell. The product should not only be biodegradable and non-toxic, the way you make it has to be green. In a petroleum-based manufacturing process, all of us know at every stage, whether it is extraction of crude, to refining, to fractionation, to formulation, at every step, it pollutes and also significant energy is consumed, right? Compared to that, as I mentioned, our processes is low energy consuming, almost zero pollution, and therefore we have a green manufacturing process of making a green product. And we have been able to achieve these numbers. 98% lower energy consumed in the manufacturing process compared to the product we replace. And the 2% energy we consume, it comes from our rooftop solar. So we are kind of net zero as far as energy consumption is concerned. In fact, we actually wheel extra energy into the grid because we are not consuming everything we are producing through our solar. We generate 99% less wastewater, hardly any effluent, because the entire broth becomes the final product. So the only waste which goes out of our facility is the water we use to wash the fermenter after every batch of manufacturing happens. 93% lower water consumption compared to the product we replace, and 80% lower carbon footprint compared to the product we replace, validated by a third-party study. So we are very proud that we have been able to indigenously design a process like this and manufacture the product, because of which we are able to go to the market and compete with multinational chemicals to replace their product, because we are able to offer it at prices competitive to the chemicals we replace. Yeah, circular approach in manufacturing, high on performance, green without subsidies. We are proud to say we are not subsidized by either the government or by the customer. We provide value to the customer and we don't make any subsidy money. We are in multiple businesses. I'm just showing this slide just to let you know we have a platform technology. It is not just that we can only service in one industry. We actually make surfactants, and many of you know that surfactants are used very widely, almost 50 billion global industry. So we are in multiple industries. So that's the story of ProClean. Thank you for listening to us. Any questions from the audience we can take? Narsi has given three questions to us, but if you have questions, we will prefer to answer that first.
How do you do the culture without compromising the quality when it comes to pleomorphism? That is my first question. And also, do you store the culture, and how do you deal with passages of different with the same strain quality without losing their vital genes, so that repeatability is ensured?
Yeah. So the culture, all the species in our microbial culture come from nature. There are no genetically modified microorganisms. And this concept of growing multiple microbes together in a culture was originally developed by a Japanese professor some 40, 50 years ago. So there's nothing earth-shaking in it now. It is well-established process. As long as you're able to bring together the species of microorganisms which normally coexist in nature. In the nature, none of the species are existing alone, right? They're all, living together. So we are kind of trying to replicate what happened in nature for a set of specific microorganisms, and absolutely no issue in maintaining the purity of the culture from generation to generation. They have long shelf life, and because of the unique combination, we can do the fermentation at the room temperature. Okay, did I answer all the questions or? Sorry?
Due to repeated culture and storing
Yeah,
this thing,
yeah,
you often come.
that's what I mentioned. What we do is these individual species are maintained separately, and then they are brought together to grow together. And because they are natural species, there is no problem in their, they don't either mutate or alter their characteristics. There are no issues.
But when you store it, they lose a lot of their characters. That's what we have studied, and we know that in our product.
No, it depends on the conditions. So as long as you provide the required nutrients and the conditions in which they like to grow, then there's no problem.
Morning, sir. I'm Rodik from CLIMAFIX Labs.
Yeah.
So the thing is, we've seen multiple times, and it's been like since 2019, we saw a policy coming in to ban single-use plastics. So the thing is, when it comes to bio companies like yours, which are trying to help the planet, how important is a policy engagement from the governments, like from the government side? Because we knew that plastic pollution was a very big thing, and it was polluting like India like crazy. But the thing is, it took us like 20, 30, 40 years to enact a policy ban, to enact a ban on single-use plastics. So let's say a company like yours, how important is what sort of policy changes can the government bring now to ensure that products like these kind of succeed? Like let's say how Delhi banned a lot of detergent products because it was polluting the Yamuna River. In the case of ProClean, in the case of Nature Tech, like how can government ensure that these companies or consumers must only include bio products? Like how important is the policy changes and what policy changes would be helpful for these businesses?
Understood. I will just talk about my perspective on this, and I'll let Sundar answer the question on plastics. So my view is that if you want something to propagate easily, you have to follow what I said in terms of developing products and services. You have to make it so attractive that the consumer wouldn't be interested in using the product which is actually creating the problem today. Until we are able to do that, they will go towards a cheaper option, irrespective of whether there is a ban or not. You know, there is ban on single-use plastic, but you walk around in Chennai, you can see a flower vendor actually using a single-use plastic. So you can have as many rules and regulations you want. Implementation will be difficult if it is not economically attractive. That's my view.
See, my view is when any government is coming out with a policy, the first thing we'll have to understand is if some material is going to be banned or restricted, what is the alternate? Because from a consumer perspective, no one wants to pay more. So that's something that is a no-brainer. So when you are banning, when you're putting in a blanket ban, without looking at the alternates, and when I say alternates, I mean, is there enough capacity available? Is the performance of those materials going to be at par with what is being banned? Or if it is not, then are there any relaxations available there? Can certain subsidies be offered which can help in, at least in the initial phase, to make it economically attractive? So these kind of initiatives are very important. Most of the times there is a blanket ban. So there is a state in India which comes up and says that I'm going to ban all single-use plastics from a certain date. And there is no alternate. So now the consumer, obviously business has to run. So now the consumer is obviously looking at going into anything that is available in the market, and these single-use plastics are going back into the whole ecosystem. So I would say the biggest challenge is understanding the scale, what is being banned. And one approach which I've seen, like in France, they've kind of followed, is they do a phased kind of ban. So, you start with one product, you understand what is the volume of this product being used, you know what are the alternatives, you know the price point of these alternatives, and then you start saying that, okay, I'm going to give 1 year or 2 years for this product to get into the market, and then you start saying that, okay, let's move into this product. That's one. The second is, what are some of the key segments that we should target? I mean, today, I will say even in Tamil Nadu, primary plastics are actually under a ban now, which means really your all your biscuits, your wafers, pretty much you can't use any plastics for it. So what is the consideration being given to ban a primary plastic, right? So what is the segment we are looking at? What is creating the maximum waste? And we can't win every battle. We got to pick and choose what we want to get started with, work on it, get it going, and then go to the next stage. This is what it's my perspective.
Oh, excuse me, one more question here. Here.
Hey, I'm sorry. Really
Sorry,
sorry about
last
that. I think we
question,
need
sir.
to move on.
Last question.
Uh,
Here.
I don't know where you are, but
Here,
okay.
sir.
Okay, since
One
you stood up,
question.
I had to give
Yeah.
some respect. Finish it fast, the question as well as the answer.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
If you see bioplastic production throughout the world, it's 0.0005% as against the total consumption of 500 million metric tons. So it's not a question. I'm asking a clarification. How plastic industry is gearing up to meet that bioplastics demand, eventually get into the replacement. I'm a plastic professional for the past 36 years. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. You're absolutely right. I think the overall manufacturing of bioplastics is just about 0.05% of the total plastics. See, the way I look at bioplastics is a specialty polymer. but it is competing against a highly commoditized material like a single-use plastic. So now it really depends on, okay, it's not going to be at cost parity purely because of the economies of scale. So here, I would say the industry is growing. I mean, there is a compounded annual growth rate of almost 14-15% year on year. There are more companies investing into biopolymers like, polylactic acid. We just saw in India an announcement being made as well. There are a couple of more facilities coming up in the Middle East as well. So it's going to grow like any other industry. It's not going to be that today suddenly all the plastics is going to be out and bioplastics is going to replace it. Now, how the plastics industry will have to gear up for this is you're looking at majority of the plastics industries are SMEs in India who are processors, who have either a film blowing unit or some kind of a processing unit. The advantage of bioplastics is you can use the same facility with very minimal modifications and just change the raw material base. So I would say the plastics industry is slowly warming up to the fact that, they can look at alternate materials. That also gives them opportunities to provide a different set of value proposition or different products to their customers. So the main advantage is you don't need a completely different facility. So that's where bioplastics adds a good value.
Thank you, folks. Thank you very much. I know you have more questions. Bioplastics, biochemical, these are all niche topics where you rarely find two guys who have been doing this for a long time sitting at one place. I do appreciate, at the same time, it's a pity that all good things have to come to an end. Thank you both Sundar and Shivram for once again coming down, taking your time off and helping us out. As a small token of appreciation, Manohar, I request my senior partner Manohar, we started this firm together many years back, to hand over a memento to both. And after that, a group photograph with all three of you. Manohar, group photograph.